Welkom almal, dit is tyd vir nog 'n episode van die Losgemaal en soos julle kan sien het ons 'n nuwe baadjie gekry. En nie net dit nie, my mede-kollega Hein is bietjie op vakansie, so ons het 'n spesiale aanbieder gas vanaand wat instaan vir Hein en dis 'n bekende gesig hierso. Gaan nou nie te veel tyd mors nie, maar Mier, welkom my vriend, hoe gaan dit daarso?
Daar's hy, Jacques, dis lekker om hier te wees en so op die voorhand wat die leeu's en die bulle ook mekaar bietjie gaan gaffel die naweek.
Ja, yes, ek het actually nou dat jy dit sê, besef ek het eers, so dis eintlik heel toepaslik dat jy nou saam met my die program vanaand aanbied. So ja man, maar baie dankie, laat kort kennisgewing daar, maar jy's reg, soos altyd, en ek waardeer dit regtig baie, en ek weet Hein het jou naam voorgesit sommer dadelik, so jy weet, ons is baie geëerd om jou vanaand op die show te kan hê saam met ons. Hoorie, ja, jy het nou al gesien hoe lyk die nuwe look en alles, so jy weet, ek hoop jy's opgewonde saam met ons. Hoorie, kom ons kry die show aan die gang, en soos baie mense al gesien het, en vir die wat dalk nie gesien het nie, ons het 'n spesiale gas vanaand, 2007 rugby wêreldbeker wenner. Wat nou nie te lank hier sien, maar ja, BJ Botha, hoe gaan dit met jou?
Goeie aand, Hein, hoe gaan dit?
Lekker man, hoor hierso BJ, dis regtig vir ons 'n voorreg om jou vanaand hierso te kan hê. Jy weet, saam met jou te kan rugby gesels en goeters, maar ek dink kom ons sommer net om te begin, vir die wat nou nie weet waar in die wêreld jy deesdae is nie. Gee ons net 'n bietjie van 'n opvangsessie daar, wat doen BJ Botha deesdae?
Ja nee, is reg, dankie Jacques, en weet, het is plesier om hier te wees met julle en 'n klein bietjie te praat. Ek is nou bly in Ierland nou, ek is so 2,5 jaar geretire van professional rugby. Ek het in Frankryk klaargemaak, toe kom ek terug Ierland toe. En ja, deesdae is ek coach ek hier met 'n span in Limerick in Ierland. Dis 'n span wat in die AIL, it's a All Ireland League wat speel, en dis 'n tough liga. Selfde as die McCarthy Cup in Suid-Afrika en Durban, ek dink, en jy weet, dis die level onder die eintlike wat sê hulle, die interprovincial. So jy weet, dis die ouens klim in, en is lekker om hier met die ouens te coach en hulle te sien op te gaan na die minste groep. En ja, en ek is 'n pa van 5 kinders, so ek is besig op die grond. So ja, dit hou my besig.
BJ, man van 'n pa van 5 kinders, hoor jy, hoeveel laities het jy daarom daar? Jy weet, is jy
Ja nee, my haar is maar klaar, lankal klaar.
Hoor jy, werk jy, is daar 'n rugby span op pad of iets? Gaan jy maak jy voorbereiding vir die bulle om nog 'n paar van julle manne te kry? Want ek weet ou Mier gaan nou daarso met sy leeu's kom.
Ja nee, ek dink ek draai swart vandag vanaand vir die Sharks. Ek dink ja, ons sal maar sien. Ek het maar 2 seuns en 3 dogters, ja, so ons sal maar sien. Ek dink die een sal definitief, my jongste een sal definitief nie verder as die voorry gaan nie. Hy sal verseker daar miskien insluk, en my oudste seun maar sal definitief van miskien 10 en agter as hy miskien rugby skool, of miskien sal hy na golf toe gaan, jy weet, dis die ander opsie, ek dink.
Awesome. Hoor jy, ja, BJ, ons het nou voor die tyd so 'n bietjie gesels oor, jy weet, wat daar aangaan nou in Ierland en alles, en soos ons vir jou genoem het ook, hierdie naweek skop hulle af hier in Suid-Afrika met die Rainbow Cup SA, soos hulle dit nou genoem het. Want soos ons almal weet, het hulle nou die toernooi gesplit in 'n dual competition, whatever that means. Maar ja, dit is basies, die Suid-Afrikaanse spanne speel teen mekaar, en soos jy nou net vir ons verduidelik het, speel net die Ierse spanne ook teen mekaar, basies dieselfde wat ons hierso doen. So die Zebras en daai ouens, hulle speel nie eers soos wat dit vir my klink nie. Ek dink met die intrapslag, vertel ons net bietjie, hoe ervaar julle hierdie hele situasie met, want ek dink jy het vir my en Mier genoem, dis nou al die, wat is dit, die 5de of 6de keer wat hierdie Ierse spanne al teen mekaar gaan speel. So basies, dis dieselfde as wat in Suid-Afrika aangaan.
Ja nee, verseker, Jans was regtig opgewonde om teen mekaar te speel teen die Suid-Afrikaanse spanne en die ouens wat hier nou sal oorgekom het. En die ding is, ja, jy's reg. Ek dink mans het nou in die verlede naweek die 6de keer teen mekaar gespeel teen Leinster. En het was interprovincial, jy weet, en hulle laaste naweek gespeel, Ulster het teen Connacht gespeel. En ja, die ouens is regtig uitgesien na die Suid-Afrikaanse spanne in die hele Rainbow Cup, jy weet, maar dis die ding, ons weet nie, jy weet, ons die eerste 3 ronde gaan ons speel en dan sal ons sien wat daarna gaan. Jy weet, die ding is, die ouens weet nie eers wat na dit kom nie, jy weet, as jy 1 game verloor, wat gaan dan gebeur? Jy weet, is jy heeltemal uit, is daar eindronde wat jy kan uitkom na as jy 1 game verloor of 2 game verloor, as jy regkom, jy weet, is die ding. So ja, ons sal maar net sien hoe die ding uitwerk, maar jy weet, is die ding van COVID. Ja, ons is net bly om rugby te kan speel, maar ja, die ouens raak nou moeg van teen mekaar te speel en hulle sien nou uit na ander oppositie en you know, die ander dele om te speel.
Ek wou skiet.
Ja, BJ, as jy miskien net vir ons bietjie in die prentjie kan bring, as jy nou praat van die interprovincial liga in Ierland, wat se spanne sal nou almal daar deelneem? Jy het nou vir Ulster en Munster en dan wie sal nou nog wat deel sal uitmaak van dit?
Ja, is die 4 spanne van Ierland, dis Connacht, wat op die Weskus is daar by Galway, en dan is die Noord, die Ulster, en dan is die Leinster van Dublin af in die Ooskus daar, en dan is dit Munster wat hier in die middel sit, jy weet, in Limerick, en jy weet die games is regtig, you know, high level, want jy weet, baie van die eindronde games in die Champions Cup of in die Pro 14 is baie meeste Ierlandse spanne of teen die Frankrijkse spanne of die Engelse spanne. So die ouens klim in, jy weet. So is baie lekker rugby om te kyk. Ja, ons hierdie verlede naweek, jy weet, Connacht het in Ulster gewen. En hulle die laaste wat was 80 minute, 81 minute toe kry hulle 'n penalty en toe skop na die lyn toe en jy weet toe wen die game in die laaste sekonde. So dis lekker om te kyk, maar die ding is jy weet die ouens hier wil definitief alle spanne hier bykom en klein bietjie verskillende rugby kyk.
Jy's nou 'n man wat vir Ulster en vir Munster gespeel het. En ek weet nie soos wat ons dit maar hier verstaan is dit amper soos aardsvyande en dit was seker 'n tawwe skuif geweest om van die een na die ander te skuif. So ek weet nie hoe dit afgegaan het daar nie, maar in elk geval ja, hier in Suid-Afrika is die mense verskriklik opgewonde om teen die Ierse spanne veral te speel, maar jy het nou baie pro rugby en daai tipe van goed gespeel en dink jy die kompetisie het die bene in terme van dink jy 'n zebre teen die bulle op Loftus op 'n Vrydag aand sal genoeg aftrek kry as 'n ou nou bietjie die sterk Ierse spanne ignoreer en ons weet dit gaan definitief die verbeelding aangryp, maar dink jy die ander spanne het regtig genoeg om te bring na die kompetisie om dit volhoubaar te maak oor die langtermyn?
Nou ja, op die langtermyn ek sê ja, want ek dink die ander spanne wil nog bou, jy weet, is regtig, die ding is vir my is die 16 spanne wat hopelik volgende jaar in die Pro 16 is, jy weet dat daar sal spanne wees wat soos jy sê, teen die bulle op Loftus gaan en jy weet hulle gaan regtig 'n groot les leer, jy weet, dit gaan taaf wees, en die ding is hoe hulle daar uitkom en ek dink dis you know a part of the road really they must run. En die ding is jy weet ek dink hulle sien uit na die bulle teen die Leinster speel of Munster teen Sharks of Stormers teen Sharks, maar jy weet soos die Pro 14 die ander spanne wat teen Leinster gespeel jy weet Leinster teen wat ook al Zebra, jy weet hulle het al ver gevat op in Ierland. They took them close, you know. I think they've pushed the push them to the end at times, you know. It's not that, sorry, I'm going to English here, but I think it's easier
fine
for this explanation. I think it's important that we see these teams, the minnows, if you want to call them, that they come into the league, you know, because I think that's what provides this platform for rugby as a worldwide game to grow. I think it gives them impetus for the game to grow in that aspect, for them to continually be competitive against the big sides. You know, I think we've seen it now in the preparation series, and I've been speaking to a couple of guys from Griquas, Albert van der Berg, the Medios. It's important for the guys to play against the Bulls. I mean, look at the result. For instance, Pumas, Bulls away to the Pumas in the preparation series. You know, as he done. So that's what I think what we hold on to. You know, these upsets, and I think that's what makes sport brilliant. And I think that's what hopefully this competition will bring. And I think it will evolve. You know, I think you might see guys, probably South Africans, who knows, might be signing for other teams in the Pro 14. Yeah. They might sign for a Zebra. They might sign for a Treviso. They might sign for a team in Glasgow or whatever. And you can have these South Africans playing in abroad. Yes, of course, we're going to lose them to South African teams, but I think that's where the game's going, you know, especially in the new competition, and also already what they're talking about as champions and the championship cup that they're going into, you know.
BJ,
Ekskuus, gaan Jacques.
Gaan maar.
Nee, ek dink spesifiek as 'n ou nou kyk wat vir ons wag en hierdie toernooi wat nou voorlê het eintlik 'n wonderlike opbou, wat die ding is besig om regtig bietjie excitement te create met hierdie hele situasie wat die wêreld hom nou in bevind. Is almal baie opgewonde dat hierdie ding nou aan die gang kom en so aan. Jy is hier weg in 2008 uit 'n lekker humid Durban. Is jy daai kant toe? Hoe groot van 'n skok is dit om daar te speel in terme van weeromstandighede en kondisies en sulke goeters, en dink jy dit gaan 'n groot struikelblok wees vir die Suid-Afrikaanse spanne spesifiek?
Well, ja, ek dink dit is verseker daar gaan baie meer reën wees en baie meer wind. Dis verseker, en ja, maar ek dink die game het definitief, jy weet, 'n klein bietjie na die, jy weet, vaste scrum en na die set piece nou te gaan. Ek dink jy sien 'n super rugby en ons het nou na hoeveel jaar super rugby gespeel, jy weet, toe is dit jy weet, die Australiese spanne en die New Zealandse spanne en Suid-Afrika se spanne, you know, hulle wys altyd wat hulle kan doen met die ball in hand. In die vaste, jy weet, die vaste kind of areas. So die ding is dat, jy weet, hulle weet wat kom, and I think, sorry, I'm going to go into English again.
Go for it.
If you don't mind. I think it's important that, because I think it's an important point that I think the game has gone that route. We've seen even in the Super Rugby Unlocked, and even previously how the scrum and the maul works for teams like the Bulls, we say again, you know, that it's the game that they go with. And I think they will realize that they'll need that more and more. Teams will need that. And I think that the big thing in playing overseas, is especially in these conditions, is to take your points when you can, you know. Make sure that you keep that scoreboard ticking over and pressurize the teams, you know. You're gonna get turnover. Trials, of course, but not as often because of the conditions, you know.
BJ, as ek jou kan vra, toe ek en jy nou gepraat het, jy weet, in die aanloop hierdie week het ek jou gevra, jy weet, het jy van die SA Rugby, jy weet, die Currie Beker en Super Rugby Unlocked en Preparation Series gekyk. Jy weet, die rede kon ek jou gevra het, is net, ek wil net hoor, jy weet, wat dink jy van die huidige jy weet, toestand van Suid-Afrikaanse rugby? Van wat jy kon gesien het. Dink jy die manne is daar, of dink jy die rugby it needs a lift, or what is your opinion?
No, I think it's right up there. I think we've seen, coming off a World Cup win 2019, you know, people talk about haven't played in a year against international competition, Lion series coming up, playing in your own country in the preparation series, being let go of the rugby championship, and then playing in the preparation series against some, with all respect, minnow sides and also some big sides. I think South Africa rugby is in a good place. I believe that, you know, from a rugby standard perspective, you must remember how many players play abroad in the current squad, if you talk about the international side. And I think, you know, from a provincial perspective, I'm not talking about the preparation going forward now. I'm just talking about basically the level of rugby being played. I think it's right up there. You know, we obviously have some concerns around the game in South Africa, where we're going financially, where we're going from a competition perspective, because we've left the rugby championship. We have these competitions in-house and stuff. But from a performance perspective, I don't think you're right up there with every other big competition in the world. You know, I think it's a big mental advantage that we have, is because we are playing against sides that, as I mentioned before, Pumas versus Bulls, you know, utmost physical, because you have this inner, the Pumas have this inner fire to just, they want to come out more than anything against the Bulls, you know, Sharks versus Bulls, Stormers versus Lions, whatever. So that adds that extra, you know, and then on top of that, you get the youngsters coming through, and you can throw them onto the stage and seeing that talent come through. So I'll be really interested. Already there's a couple of names being thrown around that are going to be included in the Lions series. So I think we'll have one or two surprises, I think, coming through there. So it's going to be really interesting to see.
Ja, ek dink Jacques, wat al hoe meer agterkom van hoe wêreld rugby beweeg, BJ, is ook, en dit kom vir my so oor wat jy ook sê, is dat daar's baie meer globalisasie, toe jy in jou tyd van Ulster af vir die Bokke kom speel aan die kant, wel 2010, ek praat meer of min van daai tyd, was jy een van min ouens wat daai kant was, wat gebruik is vir die Springbokke. Ek dink Jean de Villiers was op daai stadium by Munster gewees, en Joe van die Kerk by Toulon het so 1 of 2 keer betrokke gewees. Maar dit was eintlik nog 'n bietjie van 'n snaaksigheid gewees daai tyd, en ek dink dit raak nou al hoe meer, ek wil nie sê aanvaarbaar nie, maar ons raak nou gewoond daaraan, en ek wil vir jou vra wat nou al deur daai proses is om in Ierland te speel, en dan moet jy skielik by die Bokke aansluit vir 'n 3 nasies toer na Nieu-Seeland en Australië. Is dit werkbaar? Is die logistiek daar agter? Hoe groot van 'n obstakel is dit, en uiteraard is dit werkbaar, maar hoe moeilik is dit vir die ouens in 'n box setup om 'n ou in te bring van meeste van ons bokke is nou oor see, so ek dink dit gaan al hoe makliker en makliker raak. Maar ek dink in jou tyd was dit miskien nogals moeilik om oor te kom en net in te val, jy weet.
Yeah, for sure. I think at the end of the day, you're a professional, you know. So I think that's the key word there. You make sure you are ready at your beck and call, especially if you South African and a Springbok and you're playing for your country, you'll be ready, and you'll make sure you're ready to play. I think the logistics part of it is the difficult part, you know. I think having camps in South Africa, and the problem comes in then where the guys over here are playing a championship game, Toulon versus Munster, or whatever the case would be, out of season calendar. That's where the tricky part comes in, you know. And I think that's what you'll find in time to come. Who knows that they might look at, as we spoke about, you know, these guys over here are speaking about South Africa maybe joining the Six Nations, you know, there's talks of that happening. You know, that will align the calendar as well. I think the toughest part is the calendar we're playing, you know. I think it's also going to affect things like the Curry Cup. Who knows what's going to happen to the Curry Cup, because the Curry Cup is a special competition to all of us. You know, that was our tournament, you know. We win the Curry Cup, that's strength on strength. We're proud of that competition. That goes back more than anything. The Curry Cup is the competition we want to win, you know. That needs to be strength on strength. And the key there is also having the best players available to play in that. But I think we've seen different international sides taking different approaches. Some guys have said no, they won't. Ireland, for instance, they won't select any foreign-based players to play for Ireland. So that's one method of keeping them in the country. But unfortunately for South Africa, just you know, with, I suppose, the lure of financial, you know, gains abroad, and, you know, the guys making a living for themselves for a short space of time, you know, that we have to have some sort of, you know, capacity to understand that, are we going to select these players? We know that they're professional, but have a good understanding with the teams they go to. And I think at the end of the day, I think both parties will be win-win for both if there's a good understanding and a good communication between the sides. If they are looked after well at the clubs, I think then they'll perform well for obviously for South Africa or whatever team they be playing for, and vice versa. I think where the problem comes in is that, you know, that it's almost an ownership kind of problem, where the teams feel it's an ownership of the contract. They pay the player to follow up their services, and now they're going to play for their country. But I believe that just enhances the player's profile and for the club and ability. Obviously, hoping that he stays injury free, but that's part of the game, you know.
Ja, ek dink iets om oor opgewonde te wees is dat ons is besig om bietjie van 'n Suid-Afrikaanse oogpunt af bietjie die dinge te align, in die sin dat as ons op die einde in die European Cup kan speel, dan kan jy nog steeds 'n situasie hê waar 'n RG Snyman teen 'n up and coming Bill Slot vergelyk kan word op dieselfde veld op dieselfde dag, in dieselfde toestande, en dit is baie moeilik om ouens wat in Japan speel te vergelyk met ouens wat in Suid-Afrika speel, met ouens wat in oorsee speel. En ek dink hierdie kompetisie, omdat ons so baie spelers in Europa het, as ons regtig in die European Cup kan inkom, dink ek dit gaan regtig die norm word, dat ouens kan bokke letterlik word vanuit spanne oorsee, van Munster en van sonder dat hulle ooit eers in Suid-Afrika noodwendig op die radar was, kan hulle self, want ek dink op die stadium is daar net iets soos 2 of 3 ouens wat hulle self vanuit oorseese spanne in die Springbok span ingespeel het. Ek weet Reinhard Elstad het homself in die Springbok span ingespeel van 'n oorseese klub af. So ek dink dit gaan definitief daai deure oopmaak, laat ouens meer teen mekaar vergelyk ook kan word, en laat die publiek ook meer op datum is, om te kan sê, ek sien nou daar's 'n van Rensburg ouetjie wat saam met Paul Willems destyds Kruiwenweek gespeel het vir Noord-Transvaal, wat in die mix is vir die Bokkamp en so aan, wat oorsee speel. Ek kan nou nie onthou by watter klub nie, by een van die Franse klubs, en niemand weet regtig van die ou nie, maar as ons teen mekaar weer begin kompeteer, dan gaan die publiek ook baie meer op spoed wees en beter miskien verstaan wat aangaan partykeer.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think it's key. And you know what? So looking back now, and we think about the logistics about traveling for Super Rugby. I mean, can we even believe of how we used to travel as a team back and forth, and then suddenly waiting for a Saturday game? I remember playing for the Sharks, you know, waiting, and I went. It was actually a prominent victory for the Bulls against Stormers. They had to beat them by like 70 points. I don't know if you remember. It was in Cape Town, and we were actually waiting as the Sharks to go to the semi-final in Christchurch. And, you know, the Bulls basically won that. And then I think they had that big victory against the Chiefs in Loftus, or can't remember, something like that. Anyway, yeah. So the thing is about the Champions Cup and South Africa playing in the north, in the northern hemisphere, is the timeline, you know, the TV rights. People will be able to watch rugby at a time they'll be awake. And I think, as you say, notice the players that are abroad. Yes, what happened to this guy? Oh no, he's playing for this French club. He's playing in the top 14. You know, he's playing in the Premiership. He's playing here. And as you say, out of sight, out of mind. You know, and I think that's where the other side things come in. The media can create a great kind of advertisement for any player. I think they can put a selectors panel in a position to almost select a player, I believe, you know, if they're putting the pressure on, and even to give them a chance to be seen. I think that's paramount, I think. And look, I think the key with South Africa is that we obviously want to keep our players in South Africa. That's where we want to keep them. But as we've mentioned, it's not realistic. And, you know, we have got such a surplus of immense talent coming to South Africa. We just don't have enough space for them. So hence the fact we have got so many South Africans playing for different countries. And, you know, well done to those guys that have got long, successful careers playing for other countries and, you know, making successful, you know, impacts in other provincial and international teams, you know. I think that shows how strong our game is. And as you mentioned before, you know, that I think it will add to only be benefit, I think, of the Springboks going forward.
Great. Go for it, Jacques.
Nou, I just want to, ek wou nou net gesê het, ek weet nie of Antoni nog kyk nie, maar hy het 'n vraag hierso gevra, maar die helfte van die vraag het uitgekom. So hopelik kan hy maar net weer die vraag vir ons vra. Maar ja, jy en Antoni ken mekaar redelik goed.
Yeah, we ken mekaar goed. Yeah, we've played against each other a few times now, racing Metro actually against Munster, and I think he's got the better of us once or twice, and we have as well once or twice. So we've seen each other on the field, and we obviously old school friends back in Durban. And yeah. Look, I know Wynand, his father, obviously well, and kind of, you know, great respect for the legend, and you know, he comes from a, you know, great family, and he's a great family man himself. So, you know, and he's made a huge impact in France, and he's a good example of a platform that's been, you know, taken to the max. You know, he's given opportunity to kind of, you know, which maybe wasn't in South Africa. And, you know, that's the other part of this, you see, is that not specifically on Tony, but I suppose other players that are late developers, players that, you know, develop at a later stage. They might have 2 or 3 years under the belt in a European side, you know, and then suddenly they say, right, come into the Springbok squad. Let's have a look at you. You've bided your time. You're a late developer, specifically the tight 5. You know, I think we've got such especially that area of the game. You know, and I think as we've seen before, you know, these guys can play till a ripe old age. You know, not so much the backline and obviously the loose trio.
Ja. BJ, as ek jou mag vra, jy praat nou van late developers en ontwikkeling en so aan. Jy's ook een van daai manne wat vasgebyt het met rugby. Ek dink nie jy het self Kruiwenweek gespeel nie, en jy het jouself opgewerk tot 'n Springbok. En jy was in Durban High School. Vertel gou vir ons bietjie, wat is die strukture vir die juniors daar in Ierland? Hoe sal 'n tipiese ou se pad loop van 'n onder 9 wat hy nou die eerste keer aan 'n bal kan of mag vat, of hoe oud ook al, en hoe werk hulle stelsels daar, en hoe vergelyk dit met wat ons hier in Suid-Afrika doen?
Yeah, it's a big difference. First and foremost is the fact that it's it's not as big a game as we have in South Africa. Obviously, it's not their main sport. It's you know, they compete with a lot of the Irish sports. You know, they've got these. There's almost, it's like AFL in Australia. They play a game called GA, which is they kick that ball through the posts, and they've got a big oval field for it. And then they play that other one. It's almost like hockey, but they play it in the air, you know, and they wear a helmet and some, you know, it looks next level. And it's very popular here. And it's actually this competition between how they introduced this at school, you know, between rugby and this GAA. So GAA stands for Gaelic Games. It's like Gaelic Games, Gaelic meaning Irish. So it's this competition of that. So mostly in Ireland, it's a lot of the kind of private schools that play rugby, and the competition is really big in Dublin. Big rugby schools there, and they mostly produce a lot of the school rugby boys that come through. You know, they were the guys. They will probably have a team that comes from South Africa to play against those teams, the Black Rock and Rockwell College, and they do have big schools down here, but I would say it's more congested up in Dublin. And then it's like the country, really. The rest of the country, it's little klein dorpe, you weet. Little country and kind of little teams that basically have 1 or 2 players coming out of them, and you know they'd be hard enough to maybe make the Munster and come through that system. Look, the thing is, South Africa for me, being over this side, I just feel, you know, I don't know if people, I'm sure they do see this, but there's no country that gets anywhere close to South African schools boys rugby. You know, it's just on another level from from where it starts to where it finishes, the platforms that the level of competition, and the kind of, the high performance side of it. We obviously talk about Craven Week, we talk about these other weeks they've brought in now recently, and we talk about the academies and the scouts and everything. And you know what? It has its downside, where I think they push those guys, as I spoke about, late developers and guys that obviously maybe don't perform at such a high level for one game. And it's a harsh reality that it's a harsh reality. This is cutthroat. It's a cutthroat industry at times. So, you have to be able to hold yourself and come back again. And look, I learned a little bit the hard way. I wasn't at a all-boys school my whole career, which I feel it was a benefit to me. I was at Kloof High School, which is a co-ed school, and before I went to DHS, and it's stand me in good stead, because I found that like small schools, actually came from Grey College Primary, and then I went to Kloof High School, and I had this completely change around. I think I said to Cappy there during the week, it was incredible how I changed. I was mocked for my Afrikaans, speaking English, and I had to find a way around that. And you know what? The system allowed me to basically take a perspective of proving people wrong. It was like we had to cover 2 sets of trials before we even got to the first trial of the private, like say college, Maritzburg College, Hilton, Michaelhouse, Kearsney. So by the time we got to their first trial, we were already in our third trial, which allowed, it was a long shot, but when you got your chance and you took it, and you were fortunate enough and lucky at times, because you just made it count. That's the way. But I think from a rugby school perspective, as I said, it's very difficult to compare, because there's nothing that really gets close to South African schools rugby. Really, it isn't. And and I say that because not only biasly, but you could see the surplus talent that's coming through, and how much we have really in world rugby.
Ja.
Jock, het jy nog enige vrae rondom hierdie voor ons oorgaan na die Britse en Ierse Leeus toe?
Nee, ek dink BJ het vir ons 'n goeie antwoord daar gegee. Jy weet, Rassie is op rekord wat hy gesê het, ek was een keer by ontbyt wat hy gesê het dat die grootste verskil wat hy gesien het in Ierland teenoor Suid-Afrika was dat as 'n oue spesifieke skill, kom ons sê nou Conor Murray se bokskick is nie lekker nie, dan hulle sal 'n ou upskill totdat as hy net 1 of 2 weaknesses het, hulle sal met daai speler stiek en hulle sal hom upskill. Waar in Suid-Afrika het ons 'n geneigtheid om we move on to the next big thing. Jy weet, as 'n ou 'n bietjie sukkel met een of ander aspek van sy game, jy weet, soos BJ gesê, dis cutthroat, jy's gone. En ek dink omdat ons net miskien bietjie meer resources het, maar dit sal interessant wees om te weet hoeveel pap op die grond val along the way, want daar kan miskien ouens wees wat as hulle net 'n bietjie geduld met hulle uitgeoefen was, kon hulle dalk wêreldsterre gewees het, jy weet. So jy kan aanbeweeg, Cappy, na die Britse Leeus, by all means.
Yeah, I will comment on that, because I think it's important. I think it's something that I realized when I came here for the first time at Ulster. I was like, what's the strength and conditioning kind of program, and this kind of projection of what you need to be, and these certain steps you need to take. I mean, in South Africa, we really just want to play rugby, and we'll lift a little bit of weights here, and gym a little bit here, but that's where we want to get stuck in. It doesn't matter. And as you say, I think they definitely appreciate that those different stages a player goes through. They can be physical, they can be mental. Players go through dips. They might be just that they have a bad run of games. It's what it is, and it takes a good coach and a good environment to get that player together again, to move on to that level where he was, or even further. And I think that's probably the great thing how Rassie has obviously taken that in and brought it to the Springboks, and there was a big showing of how they projected, obviously, in the leading up to the World Cup, and even before that, and the players they have around there, and I think they can definitely just take that forward with that in mind.
Just a quick question before we move on, BJ, did you feel that your game had improved going overseas, or would you have rather stayed? How did you feel after, let's say, I mean, obviously it didn't happen immediately, but after a few years, did you feel that you had developed into a better player than what you were in South Africa? Or do you think you would have become better staying in South Africa? If it wasn't,
Good question. Good question. And you can, like for me, it's, I think when I left, I think what I definitely did is I took more responsibility. I had more responsibility in my capacity, so I had to deal with that, you know. I was brought over here for a reason. When I was in the Sharks, obviously for 8 years, you know, it was my team, you know, that I've just been lived and breathed to play for the black and white, you know. And when I realized that dream, it was, you know, to play for them and achieve as much as we can, and together. And we had a lot of obviously experienced players still with us when I left from the early days. But it was a different sinking, because that team was a developed team. I mean, they went on to win the Currie Cup that year, and you know, it was built up obviously of the 2007 Super Rugby team. You know, it was a mature, experienced side. I mean, I feel for me that's one of the best, if not one of the best sides to ever be part of, you know, really just building up to those stages of the latter parts of my career with the Sharks. And then when I moved on, specifically, I went to a team that was basically building again, you know. So it was a thrown in the depths of responsibility to take a good look at myself, become a little bit more of a leader, in the sense of bringing people with me, where I just had to concentrate on myself. I just had to concentrate on my own game at the Sharks, because obviously it was this kind of experienced, mature kind of environment where coming over to a team that, you know, bring guys with me, leadership skills that I had to develop myself. I just didn't have them, you know. How do you bring these guys with you and understand not only that, but the tradition and the history of the team that I'm going to, you know, how that can impact you as well, and understanding of where they want to go and what success they want to have. And obviously they showed that Ulster in one part. How Johan Miller went there, Ruan Pina, Stefan de Blanche, all the guys, Marcel Coetzee, we obviously, you know, all these guys that were from the Sharks, you know. So it was a good pathway for a lot of Sharks players to go to Ulster.
Well, as I've mentioned, we obviously want to talk about the British and Irish Lions as well, and definitely one of the things.
Afrikaans. Ek sal maar Engels
Ja, sorry man, jy steek my nou sommer aan, nou praat ek Brits hier so. Maar ons wil graag oor die Britse en Ierse Leeus praat, en dit as deel van ons launch en alles gaan ons nou 'n hele countdown reeks hê met die op pad na die Britse en Ierse Leeus. Hoopelik gaan iemand nie 'n spanner in die hooks druk en die toer kanselleer nie. Maar op hierdie stadium gebeur dit nog. Dis iets wat gaan gebeur daarom. En iets net voor ons daarby inkom, kom ons kry net so 'n lusmakertjie vir die mense wat nou nog so 'n bietjie sukkel om lus te raak vir die Britse en Ierse Leeus.
Oh, you have to go as a fan on a Lions tour, just to be part of one enormous family of 30,000 people.
You see a sea of red just in front of you. It was like nothing I've ever experienced before.
South Africa has a special atmosphere to it that you can't find anywhere else.
A country that absolutely adores rugby. It lives, breathes rugby all the time.
I think I feel as though South Africa get it the most, and you know it's going to be hard. No point in going touring somewhere where it's easy.
Having the support of Lions fans, it gives us extra motivation when times are tough during the game.
Sometimes get an opportunity to get up close to the players, and that's what's going to create that special atmosphere.
There's actually a relationship between the team, the badge, and you as supporters.
I was lucky enough on both tours. I had probably 5 friends who all travelled out. For them, they're like, this is the best money we have ever spent on going to watch a rugby game.
To be there as part of the Sea of Red, you'll never ever forget.
Daar's nou 'n leeuspan wat my opgewonde maak, Jacques. So, Tony het gekom na ons toe en hy wou geweet het, wat is jou opinie? Kom ons begin sommer dadelik daar. Hulle praat van the Sea of Red. Ek weet nie of ons the Sea of Red gaan sien nie. Never mind the Sea of Green. Maar ja, ons wag nog almal in spanning om te hoor, gaan hulle enige toeskouers toelaat? Ek dink ek sal my geld daarop sit, dit gaan nie gebeur nie. Ek het kaartjies na die Bulle Lions game toe, whatever, daar gaan my drome. Maar wat dink jy, soos Antoni daar vra, wat is jou opinie wat die impak van Leeus stadions op hierdie toer gaan hê? Wat dink jy is die impak?
Yeah, I think it's difficult to say. Well, I will tell you that there's no doubt that the South African, and our same bias again, but the South African Lions tour is a special one. And I speak to the guys here this past weekend. I was doing some TV work with Tommy Bow, talking about the 2009 tour, and kind of talking about the effects of kind of being in the country and just feeling it. You get a feeling of this kind of it's building, and it builds the whole week to the game. It doesn't just come the game. You can feel this hostility, and then you pass through those concrete walls, and it's us against the rest of South Africa. And that's, I think, a big weapon for us as the Springboks. But it's not that it's going to be the end all. I think it's going to be obviously not the show we would want to have, because I think again Ian McGeekin says it again in his show that a lion in South Africa is special. You can take him to Australia and New Zealand, and even the guys here, you can ask them. It's a special place to go as a lion, and people would like to go on this trip. And we've seen even South African players talk about wanting to play against the Lions in South Africa, and wanting to be part of that, and how desperate they are. Some even saying that, matching it with a World Cup. So for sure. But I think to answer the question about the empty stadiums, of course, which way do we look? Do we look the fact that at least there's going to be a Lions tour in South Africa and not the UK and Australia? Or do we say that, there's going to be no people in the stadium, no, it's not going to be a success? I think the success is that hopefully the series goes ahead as planned, and that the important part is that the provincial teams play against the Lions as well. I think it's a special series that is still the only series for me that holds, the real rugby series of the past together. The integration between the test teams and the B teams and the junior Springboks and these SAA teams that play against the Lions, and then that builds up to those test series that is really special. I mean, you saw from the video just sitting here and watching that, it's going to be different as we've seen the games here and in South Africa. But as I said, I think the positive thing you have to look at, and unfortunately in these times we have to hold on to the positive, is that it goes ahead and the guys are playing, and we can cheer hopefully from some part outside on our stoep or from our house,
Yeah, they should have games at Ellis Park, and then we all just get into Ponty Tower or something like that. Take over Ponty, hashtag. Jacques, gooi vir ons iets daarso. Jy het sekerlik 'n vraag oor die Leeus.
Nee, wel, ek sal bietjie vir BJ wil vra oor sy eie pad met dit, want dit is maar iets wat oor almal se pad kom, en 'n ou mis dit, en ek sal net graag sy storie wil hoor, want as ek reg onthou het hulle vir John Smith op vaskop gespeel teen die Britse Leeus in 2009. Jy was toe al by Ulster. Yes. En Jake White het jou nogal na daai verloor teen Australië, wat Jake White amper gefire was, het hy daar nog Augustus rond het hy jou begin back, en jy 2006 het jy gefeature, in 2007 het jy gefeature, 'n lekker wen gehad op 'n stadium op Royal Bafokeng teen die All Blacks en al sulke dinge. En toe kom Pieter de Villiers, en ek wil eintlik meer op praat tot die impak wat 'n afrigter kan hê op 'n ou se drome, en wat kan gebeur. Ek weet nie of dit die rede was en of dit maar net die skuif Ulster toe was, soos jy sê, out of sight, out of mind. was nie, maar dit was maar 'n bietjie kontroversieel geweest destyds dat John vaskop gespeel het. Ou kan seker nou nie veel daaroor sê nie want ons het die reeks gewen, maar ek sal net graag jou storie wil hoor oor jou Britse Leeus en wat het gebeur en so aan.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think the road I travelled, and as you said, I was, backed by Jake and continued hopefully to perform, to be selected, and fell in line again with a great team that obviously went on to great success. Understood the process, and obviously lived my dream really to be a Springbok. And obviously, as a Springbok, you want to play, not only be a Springbok as we are, we want to play as many tests as possible. So, yeah, I look back not with regret, but obviously with some thoughts about the possibility of being selected. You can not only say that you wish this would have happened, because who knows if you were selected or not, but obviously leaving South Africa, I realized that it might, kind of diminish or maybe lessen my chances of being selected. It was a big decision for us. I feel a lot of things to do in South Africa, but personal decisions around the time we were expecting our first child. We actually traveled when we were 8 months. My wife was 8 months pregnant, and these personal things. And if it wasn't then when was it with a new baby and all these other things that add to your life. But playing up until 2011 and still being based over here, it was still great that I could put my hand up and still be able to be selected. That was then under Peter de Villiers, and it was even more satisfying when we could play against kind of some of the Irish teams and the international team of the international platform when I was still playing for Ulster. So that was great. But yeah, I look back, and from a Lions perspective, it's probably the one that sticks out. That coming off leaving in the 2008, it's the one that sticks out for me, above, other than the 2007 Super Rugby final, but you won't speak about that. But other than that, it sticks out really. And to be honest, you look back and think about the timing and all these things, but look, you can't do that. And I said, you just have these thought process that think about your career, because I think you have some plan, and I think in the back of your head, you want to, as a player, you want to look at playing SA schools, then you must play SA 21, then you need to play junior Springboks, and you need to play Springboks, and then you have to think about, are you going to go to a World Cup and have the opportunity to go to World Cup, and then it's the Lions, and then Tri Nations, and you kind of, in your mind, you set this up. And so yeah, there's no doubt that I look back and something that like that sticks and set out for sure. But the opportunities and the kind of success it gave me playing 4 sides in Europe, well, not the success, the satisfaction, and kind of that side of things. It's not like I will turn back the clocks and say what would I've done different. It's easy to say in hindsight, but it's probably one that sticks out for sure. That it's a special series to be part of. And as you said, once every 12 years, it's not many players that can play there twice. Look at the opportunities now. I think Frans Steyn is one of the only that could be selected. Again, who knows what will happen? I don't even know if that might happen. Who knows? I think he's a game changer. So who knows? But he's coming. He's been the Springbok since one of the youngest Springboks ever. So yeah, it doesn't happen often.
BJ, baie dankie vir dit.
Yeah, sorry, Jock, ek wil net vir BJ 'n proposisie gestel het. I mean, hy obviously was hy een van Jake se manne gewees. En BJ, soos jy weet, Morney Steyn, al die manne is daar by die bulle. Jake is daar so. Morney is nie meer jonk nie. So, jy weet, as jy nou op die vliegtuig klim, 10 dae quarantine in Suid-Afrika, jy kan vir die bulle het jy's 'n vaskop probleem. Jy weet, ons het net vir Trevor op hierdie stadium. So there's still a chance you can maybe make it. You never know, you're lucky in a big city. And you'll be surprised. Dis of 'n baasfees wie kyk hierdie show, by the way. Ons het al groot mense, groot dame wat hierso kyk, hoor. So ja, ek sê maar net, as jy hier
Well, all I can say is I'm ready, Just shout, I'm ready. I've got my 8-star polished. My 8-star always polished.
Ek gaan vir Willem Strauss en Edgar Rathbone nou WhatsApp na hierdie show en sê, kyk die show, BJ het op die lig geoffer, hy kom. Hy's bereid om vir die bulle te speel met een oog toe. Hy's 'n groot shock, maar jy weet. Anyway, hoorie BJ, jy het obviously jy soos ons gesê het, jy die rugby dopgehou hier in Suid-Afrika en goeters. En jy weet van die manne wat daar in Europa en waar ook al speel. As jy nou off the cuff, ek moes jou eintlik vooraf gewaarsku het, maar ek gaan jou nou op die spot sit. As jy nou 'n voorry moet kies en as dit te taaf is, kies ten minste net vir ons 2 vaskoppe vir die Britse en Ierse Leeus Springbokke. Wie sal jou vaskoppe vir die of voorry? As jy vir ons 'n voorry kan gee vir die bokke, go for gold.
Ja, voorry, for my is Trevor. For me is he number 1 at the moment. For me, Trevor Nyakane. For me is the number 1, and then I find that as we see that hooker is a position that's changed a few times now, but I enjoy from a scrummaging perspective Bongi is for me probably the best scrummager, scrummaging hooker if you have that combination, and then Kitsoff at Lucid, for me is definitely an out. Behind him, you got Malcolm and these guys coming through. It's he adds a different part to the game, I think, and so that's where they kind of bridge that, and we've seen that system work for the guys, and then I think it's we have a situation now where a lot of the team that played in 2019 were really young. But and I think one of the things was Trevor was unlucky. We didn't see much of him, obviously getting injured in the first game. No, for me, structure really is not in combinations. I feel Trevor and Bongi really scrum well together with Stephen Kitsoff. Need that, we're going to need that, because I feel that that's where we've got 2000. Look at that. I mean, it changes the game straight up. So our front row, I would say at this stage.
Ja, ek moet sê ek like nogals daai voorry. Obviously Malherbe en Hein is in die mix, maar ja, Trevor het regtig na lockdown was hy, ek dink jy sal saamstem. Jy weet, Trevor speel regtig goeie rugby. Ja. He's had to stand in quite a bit with dat ek sy naam vergeet, Marcel van der Merwe wat teruggekom het van Frankryk af. We don't know what's going on there, but it doesn't look good. He's on his way back to France now. So ja, ek weet nie wat het daar gebeur nie, maar hy's heeltemal uit sy diepte uit op hierdie stadium.
Hoor hierso BJ, kan jy vir ons sê hoe's die ek wil amper die woord vibe gebruik as julle daar by die oefenvelde is en so is daar 'n opgewondenheid onder die manne? Is dit iets wat die ouens heeltyd oor praat? Is die media on board? Is dit besig om bietjie die vlammetjie bietjie op te steek aan daai kant of kan 'n ou voel is bietjie gedemp en dis maar onseker?
Nee, there's a klein bietjie van al twee, weet. The guys are really excited. I know that it's on everyone's tip of their tongue. The media is kind of expecting even this Rainbow Cup. They talk about giving players opportunity to maybe have a last showing, even though the side's going to be selected now in a couple of days' time. Yeah. We see that a couple of players are still putting their hands up, or the selectors are unsure, whatever. No, there's no doubt there's excitement. I mean, as I said to you before, that runs between the players and that runs between the media, that South Africa is the place they want to come for a Lions tour. I speak to the media and say that they're really disappointed. A lot of the media, even though the players are going to be going, and obviously some television staff, whatever the case may be, but a lot of these kind of media guys are going to do things through Zoom, and standing this side through Zoom. I mean, what experience is that? So unfortunately, they're not going to be there, but there's a huge excitement, but also a disappointment at the same time. I think it's the unsurety of, I think the guys will really be, in a better place once they step on on that aircraft. I think, once they step on that aircraft, I think then we'll know. The flame will be burning, and the guys will be waiting for them in South Africa. I think it's this unsure of COVID and all the stuff that's happened before that, unfortunately, just natural for us to feel like this, But there's definitely something building, and I think it's because it's been confirmed South Africa. It was a little bit. It was, if you look at a couple of weeks back, even a month back, where it was Australia and UK, and the guys were like, "What is this? Can you even call it the Lions?" But now they confirmed it, and that's set this kind of pace now, and hopefully it can build, and everything can run smoothly if it can be.
Ek dink as 'n ou al hierdie dokumentêre, they showed all the documentaries of the previous Lions tours. Het hulle nou bietjie hier gewys net om die mense bietjie opgewonde te kry. En as 'n ou in daai kleedkamers ingaan, ek wil vir jou sê dis nogal laat die nekhare regop staan. So ek is ook oortuig daarvan as daai manne hier land en hulle daai eerste oefensessies en hulle daai eerste team sessions by die hotelle en hulle begin jy weet teen die Stormers regmaak vir 'n wedstryd. Ek dink daar gaan baie, ek wil nie eers sê spice inkom nie, ek wil sê Nando's very hot chili sauce gaan vinnig daai temperatuur opstoot, en ek dink ook die rugby wêreld is reg vir iets sinvols en iets wat regtig bietjie meaning het en so aan. Ek dink hierdie Britse Leeu toer gaan een wees wat nog baie lank onthou gaan word. Omdat dit so uniek is, en ek dink ons moet dit as mense embrace en die beste daarvan maak wat ons maar kan, jy weet, en agter dit inklim. Dit help nie om negatief daaroor te wees nie. Ek dink as elke ou sy deel bring en positief is en aanvaar wat ons het, dink ek dit kan nog steeds great wees en dit gaan groot wees hierdie. So baie dankie BJ.
No, there's no doubt about
that. Hoorie BJ, om af te yes.
Sorry, Cappy.
No, go for it.
No, I was saying for sure. I think it's something that's needed, I think it's been so uncertain. We see these, Pro 14 final happening. It was a Pro 14 final, but there were no kind of playoffs before that, and things uncertain, traveling here, and then one team, and then suddenly there was a game, Leinster was supposed to play Toulon, and Toulon didn't travel. And then Toulon then Leinster was put through to the next stage, and all these questions were asked, how does that work? And all these uncertainties. And I think the big thing about the Lions series, and because it's such a big series, I mean, one of the biggest, as we know, world series, that we can just throw all our energy behind that, and it can be something that can change really, as they say, the time we've had now from rugby and uncertainty, that you can identify with it, you can get behind it, you can look forward to it. I think, as we know, when the Springboks play any test in South Africa, and they come out on top, it changes people's daily lives. They strut into the office on a Monday morning. We know as players the effect we have on that. We speak about that. The guys know that now. We know the effect they have on the people of South Africa. Never mind a test against the British and Irish Lions. So it speaks for itself.
That is awesome. BJ, to close off with, om af mee te sluit, geef ons jou voorspelling tussen die Britse en Ierse Leeus. Ons weet jy gaan sê die Bokke, maar wat gaan dit wees? Gaan dit wees 3-0, 2-3, 2-1, wat gaan dit wees? Gooi vir ons 'n score daar.
Just remind me of the test series, where they just remind me again of the way they're playing.
At this stage, op hierdie oomblik lyk dit soos asof hulle in Kaapstad 1 game gaan speel en 2 in Johannesburg. Maar is nog nie geconfirm nie.
Yeah, which is first?
I think Cape Town.
Cape Town.
Yeah.
I think if I remember correctly, and I know as a player, Cape Town hasn't been the best kind of play from a Springbok perspective. We know that Ellis Park is the place you want to play. And, that's been key for us. And it's not to say that, that we can't perform there. But if you had to look at that, and I'm sure the Lions will look at that as well, that's what they analyze us for. But I think it will be a 2-1 victory. I think I believe that there's no doubt, I think that we will win the first test. and then you might see, who knows what happens the second test, because that's just the way it is. And then but yeah, there's no doubt that I feel Springboks are going to be, better than the Lions from a series perspective, and that's my belief there. And I think if we win the first 2 tests, the third one's always a tough one. Doesn't matter how much you are up for it. But yeah, I think as we've seen with 2009, there can be surprises all over the place. And that's what's the key. Predictions are only predictions, And it's also you speaking from the heart as well. So the best of the British, the British and Irish Lions against the Springboks, it's going to be close, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be tough, and that's what you wanted, But I do think we're going to have we'll have a successful series for the Springboks, no doubt.
100%. I like your predictions and I like your front row. Hoorie BJ, dit was 'n baie groot eer om dit vanaand met jou te kon gepraat het, en ek hoop nie dis die laaste keer wat ons met jou kan praat nie. Ons sal baie graag weer nader aan die tyd, miskien tydens die toer, kan ons bietjie met mekaar gesels weer. Dit sal regtig awesome wees as jy weer met ons kan gesels.
No guys, it was awesome. Apologize to the listeners for my lack of Afrikaans. I'm going to go back to my second language forms back there in matric, and my parents won't be happy with me because my ouers praat net Afrikaans by die huis, net Afrikaans.
Jy's nou in diep moeilikheid.
Ja, ek is diep moeilikheid nou. Ek gaan my op die foon nou kry. En die ding is, volgende keer sal ek miskien 75% van die tyd Afrikaans praat en bietjie beter doen, maar baie lekker, dit was baie lekker ouens, en plesier. Ek sal definitief weer kan praat.
Ek wil net ietsie vra hier, Cappy, voor ons nou klaarmaak. Ek het net een laaste ding. En dit was nou vir my baie lekker onderhoud hierdie, want ons 3 manne het baie naby aan dieselfde haarstyl ook, so dit was nou baie lekker gedaan. Maar ek wil net vir BJ vra, hy moet ons bietjie vertel van daai goue 1988 G-Wagon, daai Mercedes. Is dit waar dat jy 'n goue Mercedes gery het daar in Ierland?
Klein bietjie bysie.
Oh my goodness, hier kom het Jacques.
Okay. So daar's die
Ek dink nie hy hoef iets te sê nie, hy het dit sommer vir jou gewys.
Wel, hy's so 88. Maar hy loop nog baie goed, jy weet, en dit is die ding, ek wil hom nog plaas toe vat in Suid-Afrika en allerhande jy weet goed doen met hom, but it's been one of those sorry, I'm cut off there. I think I got it in 2000, was literally someone was looking to sell it, and coming from a South African perspective, we love our Jeeps and Land Cruise and stuff, and it was something completely different, and it wasn't it was definitely not in the same G-Class 63 what you find in South Africa. This was a little bit of scrap, and I had to glue some things together, but she runs still very well, and it's my kids love it more than I do, put it that way. So it's an antique.
Maar BJ, het hy plek vir 6 kinders?
Ja nee, hy het nie eintlik plek vir 6 kinders. Maak 'n plan. Ons sit hulle almal in die
want jy het nou 5. Jy weet, is nooit te laat, jy weet.
Ja nee. Jy vang my daar. Ek jy het nou gevang, maar nee. Hy het nie eintlik plek vir 5 kinders nie. Ek moet 'n plan maak daar. Waar agterheen sit op die wiel of iets, jy weet, so nee. Dis maar 'n probleem.
Nou maar fantasties BJ, en baie sterkte vir jou daarso, en met jou coaching en alles wat jy mee betrokke is aan daai kant. En baie dankie vir jou tyd. Ons het dit baie
baie dankie ouens. Dit was regtig 'n plesier, en ek sien uit daarna om weer op te kom.
Baie dankie, en Jacques, dankie vir jou instaan. Ek glo nie dit sal die laaste keer wees nie, en ons almal wat saam gekyk het, soos gewoonlik, baie dankie vir almal se ondersteuning. En laat weet ons op ons Facebook page, like hierdie video op YouTube en waar ook al julle gekyk het. En laat weet ons wat dink julle van ons nuwe look. Dit sal regtig waardeer word. My manne, alles van die beste. BJ, bly veilig. Jacques,
dankie ouens.
Bly veilig. Sien julle weer.
Lekker man.